When I was in high school, I had a really good friend who lived next door to a house that was always up for sale. People would move out in the middle of the night without a word. And it hadn't had the same owner for more than 6 months for what seemed like 3 years. One night, we were really bored and he suggested that we go explore the house next door since it had been sitting empty for a while. He suggested that we go around the back where there is a doghouse that he can crawl through, and he then would unlock the door and let me in. The house itself is really unremarkable. It looked like it was built in maybe the 1950s and was a craftsman style house in an older, nicer part of town. My friend's house was similarly built. The kitchen had a really nice built-in breakfast table set against a picture window. The house's electricity was off, but you could see the street light through the window. My friend and I sat down on the floor across from this table and are just hanging out, talking. Why? Who knows? And then, all of a sudden, my friend screams in, and in that instant, my vision goes black, and it wasn't just that I couldn't see, my body was engulfed in this sickly coldness from head to toe. I start screaming, and I feel my friend's hand grabbing mine and pulling me in some direction forcefully. My vision slowly comes back, and I start to warm up when I realize that we're outside under the street light. It was December. We should have been much warmer inside of that house. Finally, I look at my friend and he looks scared. I'm really confused and kind of panicked myself, and finally ask him what happened. He says that as I was talking, a black thing, this figure that was all black and only had the vague shape of a girl, crawled out from under the table and sat on top of me. Apparently, I started groping around with my eyes wide open, like I just couldn't see, and he was so freaked out, so he just pulled me out of the house. We're still friends, and we bring it up every now and then, but the story itself never changes, and it still sends chills down my spine. To this day, I've never felt such blackness or coldness in my life. It was palpable, almost sticky. For a couple of days afterwards, I couldn't shake this unsettling feeling, and I could never walk past that house again. Every time I stay at my grandmother's house, I hear someone walking upstairs. It starts at one side of the room and casually walks to the other end and stops. This usually happens maybe twice a night. I didn't start hearing it until I was about 14 years old, which was when my grandparents made me start sleeping in a different room on the first floor because they too started sleeping in separate bedrooms, even though both of their rooms are also on the first floor. For a little backstory, I have always been afraid of the upstairs at their house. I don't know why, but it always freaked me out, and I refuse to go up there alone. I'm 23 now, and still won't go up there alone. There is one room specifically. It's a long, narrow bedroom. When you open the door, there are closets on both your left and right, and a bed placed roughly in the middle of the room, and a window on the far side opposite to the door. I was told growing up by my parents that the sons of the previous owner claimed to see a gorilla come out of the closet at night, dance around the room, and go back into the closet. I thought nothing of this story until I had to start sleeping in the other room, the room located directly below the scary room upstairs. So, one night, we all go to bed. All the lights in the house are off and I'm still awake, lying on the bed. And that's when I heard it. Starting at one end of the room upstairs, it got closer to me, passed right above me and continued to the end of the room where it stopped. I'm wide awake, terrified, out of my mind. It was no question to me that I had heard footsteps. I knew that slow, casual pace. I was freaked out and I went to my grandpa's room. I told him what I heard and he told me that the house is old and it creaks. But he turned the dining room light on for me, so I felt a little safer. I tried going back to sleep. Then I heard it again, this time from where it ended the first time, by the windows upstairs. It walks over me again and stops when it reached the door. I thought it was over until 5 seconds later when I heard it coming down the stairs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Silence as it reached the landing. Then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and silence again as it reached the first floor. I was frozen in shock. Whatever it was on my floor of the house, and sadly unaffected by the dining room light. I was staring at the doorway to my room. The dining room light was shining in, and my vision began to distort. I felt dizzy with fear, so I pulled the blankets over my head and suddenly heard a scratching sound from inside my room. I knew exactly where it was coming from. My grandpa's gun case. It was a very obvious sound, scratching on the wood, long scratches down the front of the gun case door. I could even hear the door ever so slightly tapping against the frame as each scratch began. I tried to scream and I couldn't. I took a second to take a deep breath and let out a loud scream. In seconds, my grandpa had made it to my room and I was relieved. Needless to say, he still didn't believe me. So I did what any normal person would do. I draped a sheet over the side of my bed and slept underneath it. I wrapped myself tight in a comforter, put on headphones, and turned my back to the door. There could have been a party of ghosts in my room, and I wouldn't have even known. The next morning, my grandpa told my grandma about what happened. She said, "Oh, that's silly. You know, your cousin woke me up the last time she stayed here. She came in my room saying, 'I hear footsteps.'" After hearing my grandma say that, I slept under the bed for the rest of my week with them. I've stayed there countless times since that night, and I hear footsteps every time. I sleep on top of the bed now, but I keep my back to the door and sleep with headphones on. I haven't heard it come down the stairs since that first night, but if it does, I don't want to know. About 2 years ago, I was driving home from a family reunion pretty late at night, and the drive was about 2 hours. I didn't stay the night because I had to be back for work the following day. Most of the drive, it was on roads with dense bushes and trees on either side. You know, those creepy ones that you see a lot in movies. Anyway, I had been driving for about 4 or 5 minutes at that point, and I was starting to get really tired. You know how sometimes you just suddenly become really tired? Out of nowhere? Well, yeah, that happened to me. I knew I wasn't going to last, but I didn't come across any place that I felt I could park and safely sleep. Anyway, after it became clear to me that I wasn't going to find a place to pull up, and my tiredness wasn't going away, I did something very questionable. I pulled over to the side of the road onto the grass behind some bushes, simply to try and hide my car from anybody else who was going to come past, because the roads weren't empty and I came across another car every few minutes or so. I made a mental note that the time was around 11:22, and that's when I fell asleep. Sometime later, I was awoken by a scratching sound. I looked at the clock, which was around 11:50 this time. The sound stopped after a few seconds, and because I was still extremely tired, I didn't bother looking around and simply went back to sleep.
I was later awoken by the same sound, and it was now 12:40. This time, it really freaked me out, because the sound did not stop. The thought ran across my mind that it was just an animal inspecting the car, but why would it return almost an hour after it had already left the previous time? I looked in my rearview mirror and just managed to catch a glimpse of something running away into the forest. Now, at the time, I thought it was the damn Hawk killer. You know, the one that scratched that couple's car and then slaughtered the guy when he got out to investigate. Oh God, I thought to myself. So I got the hell out of there. There was a bend no more than 100 yards up the road, and as I came around it, there was a car parked off right to the side of the road with the driver's side door opened. I slowed down just to look to see if anyone was in there. There wasn't. Then I looked in my rearview mirror and I didn't see anything. And all of a sudden, this guy comes sprinting around the corner and he starts screaming at me, shouting stuff like, Hey you, get the hell out of your car, now! So I just noped the hell out of there and sped off. I never saw the guy ever again.